Hey, everybody, welcome to our Steelers show. I am Chris, got Joe with me. Paul is under the weather tonight, but we've got a guest, and we're excited to have him. John Harris. If you follow the Steelers over the years, you probably remember him from the Pittsburgh Tribune Review. He covered the Steelers. He was telling us about how he covered Pitt and West Virginia. I'm sure some of the other sports over there. Did you ever cover the Penguins, John?
No, but I did cover the. They had the college uh, Final Four, uh,
Oh,
hockey
okay.
Okay.
Final Four one year there, and I
All
did do
right.
that. But covered a lot of, and I also had a radio show for 5 years with Ike Taylor. It was called the Ike Taylor
Oh,
Show.
Right. Right. Right.
He was
Right.
a cornerback there, and we did. It turned out to be pretty popular. We ended up also doing the broadcast for the Pittsburgh Power, the arena team, for a couple of years. So
oh yeah.
I had a good time there. Did a lot of different things. Yeah.
Great.
Welcome, John. Thanks for
Thank you,
coming by.
guys. Thank you, Chris, Joe. Appreciate it.
So we've got you here. Obviously, it's a big week for the Steelers. Steelers in the playoffs. They play Buffalo on Sunday. Um, Man, so much talk about Mike Tomlin. We'll talk about that. Well, John wrote a book. It came out in November, but he's doing some media for it. We obviously, some of you know me from my role as editor with Mahoning Matters here in Youngstown. He's doing an event in Youngstown, January 17th at 2 p.m. at Stambaugh Stadium. If you click the link for the podcast, you'll have all the information you need to check out. John's going to be there. Official from Youngstown State's going to be there. Former Warren Harding high school coach Steve Arnold's going to be there. So a lot of good talk. John, you wrote the book, Tomlin, the Soul of a Football Coach. We're anxious to talk to you about this. You were saying you kind of looked at Mike, what kind of went on before he got hired as a coach of the Steelers, right?
Yeah, that was a big. I mean, I just didn't know a lot about him. He's a private person anyway,
Yeah.
and just didn't know. And everybody knows him as a Steelers coach, but not really. Even his 1 year with Minnesota before he went to Pittsburgh, I found that to be very interesting. Brad Childress, the coach, was great. He a
Mhm.
lot of insight, a lot of cool NFL stories. He talked about a lot of different things. Mike Tomlin was not Brad Childress' first choice to be the
Mhm.
defensive coordinator. Brad Childress was the coordinator in Philly with Andy Reid and had gotten the Minnesota job and wanted to hire Steve Spagnuolo, who everybody knows now is the defensive coordinator with the Chiefs. They
Mm-hmm.
worked together in Philly. And he wanted to hire him as his defensive coordinator, but Andy Reid stepped in and said no. So Brad Childress, he had heard the name Mike Tomlin. He was on a lot of people's radar. So he got that position, but it was interesting how the league kind of plays itself out. But Brad Childress was great. He turned the defense over to Mike Tomlin that 1 year. I think the Vikings were number one against the run defensively, and the chatter had continued that year. And Mike Tomlin was on a lot of teams' radars, but he wasn't really on the Steelers' radar, believe it or not. The Steelers had interviewed Ron Rivera. They
Mhm.
interviewed, Russ Grimm, Ken Wisenhunt, and it basically had satisfied as everybody knows, the Rooney Rule requirements. They interviewed two Rooney Rule candidates,
Yeah.
and Mike Tomlin was, in fact, Dan Rooney didn't really even know who Mike Tomlin was till his name was brought to him attention at a Rooney Rule meeting with the commissioner at the end of in December, and that's when he first learned about him.
And
And literally flew. And I didn't learn this until I started working on the book. Literally flew to Minneapolis. He was a pilot. And I don't know, a lot of people know Dan Rooney was a pilot. He flew,
oh, wow.
literally
Okay.
flew to Minneapolis to meet with Mike Tomlin, just to meet him at the behest of John Wooten,
Mhm.
who was with the Rooney Rule and former Cleveland Brown, and someone who replaced Chuck Noll at guard with the Cleveland Browns. So there's a lot of relationships and stories here.
Oh yeah.
And Dan Rooney went to Minneapolis, was just floored by meeting with Mike Tomlin, and then brought him to Pittsburgh for interviews.
I don't
So
help me out here. I don't remember this, but I heard some reporting this week. Wasn't like Russ Grimm was with the Steelers as coach at the time. Was
yeah,
there some thought that Russ thought he was getting the job? Or was that
It's in
just
the
a
book.
Russ's mind? Okay.
It's in the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you can't buy the book to read it.
There was a lot of speculation that he was the favorite, and the Steelers wanted him, in the last whatever reason at the last minute. The Steelers hired Mike Tomlin. I detail it. The paper I worked for, the Tribune Review, we actually wrote a story that Russ Grimm was offered the job and he accepted it. And then 24 hours later, that's not how it worked out. I talked to Michael Silver, who actually broke the story. He was writing for SI.com back then, and he broke the story that Mike Tomlin was going to get the job. And he had some interesting things to say. So, yeah, it was a lot of confusion going on at the end, a lot of speculation. I still want to know about Ron Rivera because going into that final week, the Steelers released their final 3 candidates, and Ron Rivera was there along with Mike Tomlin and Russ Grimm. But then he was coaching in Chicago. Chicago won their game, went to the Super Bowl, and he kind of just vanished. And I always was curious how serious the candidate, because they announced him as one of their finalists, and then you never heard his name again. So I don't know what that was about. That's like one mystery I wasn't able to uncover. Because technically, to answer your question, there was some confusion. I think it was more from Russ Grimm's agent that the Steelers, they talked contract parameters with Russ Grimm and also with Mike Tomlin. They said they wanted to have a deal in place beforehand, but they said that did not mean that they were actually offering the job. And I think there may have been some confusion that when contract talk began, they offered Russ the job. And afterwards, Art Rooney II, Dan's son, said no, we never offered it to him. Russ Grimm came out afterwards and said no, we were excited about it, but no, I was never offered the job. So great mystery with all of that. The buildup was incredible. I doubt there have been many coaching hiring process the way that one went down. It was very unusual, very nip and tuck, very mysterious, very cloak and dagger. It was just a lot of stuff going on. And for me, that was my first full year covering the team. I mean, that was like a lot of stuff going on, and trying to get it right. Yeah.
It's got to be an unusual situation when you have an organization that doesn't do a whole lot of transfer of power in that way. And so when they go to make a hire, it really feels long-term. So, I'm sure it's going to be unusual for anybody else because you could take a 1-year shot at somebody and, try something if you're willing to move on. But as an organization, since they don't like to do a whole lot of turnover there, they commit to somebody. And it's been a good long run for now. And even though there are voices out there saying things, but that's
the one thing that I think the media and fans in Pittsburgh just don't understand, even this year, because it's been, the Steelers have struggled. And the one thing that people don't really understand is that the Steelers, they don't really care. They don't care. I mean, ownership. They don't really care what the fans are saying. They don't really care what the media is saying. I mean, when they hired Mike Tomlin, nobody knew Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. It was just so they don't really, all the pressure that's going on. Some organizations there was a lot of pressure this year, a lot in Pittsburgh. I mean, I was reading articles constantly, listening to the radio. A lot of organizations would cave. They just would. They respond to, media, the popularity, what's popular, what's not. They don't really work that way. Yeah. And I guess for them, hey, we've been doing it this way for a long time. We want to win a Super Bowl every year, but we're realistic enough to know in today's NFL, it ain't going to happen. We do want to be competitive.
And watching so many other teams, throw all of their resources at making it happen right now, and it sinks them for a long time to come. Yeah, there's just a consistency about Pittsburgh that is unusual.
At the talent level, come on. When I started covering the Steelers, the talent level now, back then, it's not even a comparison. Those teams were loaded, depth on defense, Hall of Fame players. And what you look at now, they're almost a shell of what they were. I'll be honest with you. The talent level, it's just, you've got TJ Watt, but, you've got some young talent on offense. but there's not a lot of studs on that football team, which I think speaks to the Steelers coaching staff. They've had 2 or 3 guys off the street on defense.
Oh yeah, off the couch.
I mean, literally, right? So,
well, I wonder if a lot of that has to do with the salary cap. Because you talk now. There's so much talk about let's have a good quarterback on the rookie contract, because when we have to pay that guy a lot of money, now we have to deplete. Like, look at the Bengals. I mean, when they paid Joe Burrow that contract, Burrow, when healthy, is still a great quarterback, but everything else goes kapooey. You can't have that depth. And I think, it's not just the Steelers, but other teams. You can't have deep teams like you did in the past. I wonder, John, you think the Steelers have a type? I know they've only had to hire 3 coaches since '69. But Chuck Noll, I watched a documentary about him, but they're like, nobody knew who Chuck Noll was when they hired him. Right. Bill Cowher, I live in Ohio. People knew him from his time with the Browns and everything, but nobody knew Cowher. And like you said, Tomlin wasn't this hot young, coordinator everyone was fawning over. Hopefully the Steelers don't have to hire a new coach anytime soon, but it seems like they like the unknowns, right? Or do you think they would ever go after some big name next time they have to hire a coach?
What's the assistant for the offensive coordinator for Detroit? Everybody keeps talking about him now. I would never see the Steelers hiring somebody like that.
Yeah.
That's the way that's the name now. That's the hot name. Johnson, I can't remember his name, but he's a hot name.
Yeah.
The Steelers don't operate that way. And I think one thing people are overlooking, a lot of these coaches, they get a lot of things that they want when they come in.
Right.
That's not happening with the Steelers. You're not going to come in and get, you know what I'm saying? You're not going to just come in and, I want this, I want this, That doesn't work with the Steelers. I think people keep forgetting that. It does take a certain type of coach to coach there, because they're run totally differently from other organizations. So, you can have an offensive guru if you want, but you still got to adhere to that principle of strong defense in Pittsburgh with the bad weather, and you work with what we give you.
Yeah.
And right now, we gave you Kenny Pickett.
Right.
We gave you Kenny Pickett, so make it work. We paying him. We're not getting rid of him.
Right.
We're not going to get rid of him.
No.
So make it work.
Well, since you brought that up, let me ask that. And we've argued about this on the show. Paul, the guy that's out sick tonight, he's been a big Kenny Pickett apologist and everything. I know he's a young quarterback. I know he's under a rookie contract. You've got to keep him. I'm not saying you just throw him out or anything. Mm-hmm. But like a Mason Rudolph, I know he's only done it for 3 games, but he's actually scoring 30 points, something that the Steelers haven't done even at the end of Ben's tenure here in Pittsburgh. Any way you can see from what you know of the Roonies, let's speculate. I think they lose to the Bills in a close game.
Yeah.
Mason's probably not going to light the world on fire if it's going to be awful weather.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to embarrass anybody.
No.
Chance the Steelers could keep Mason Rudolph, or is he ticked off because they overlooked him for a couple of years? I wish there's some way they could do it, but the more I'm hearing, people are saying he's a nice guy, but there's a bunch of other teams in the quarterback. What's your crystal ball? Obviously, if the Steelers won the Super Bowl this year, it'd be different. But logically, what do we think is going to happen here?
I think they bring him back if he wants. He just strikes me as he's been through a lot. He's been sitting there watching, hasn't gotten his opportunity. It would have been easy to pout and get ticked off. What did he do? He got this unbelievable opportunity.
Yeah.
The second play, he throws an 86-yard. To me, it took off from there. He throws his 86-yard touchdown pass to Pickens, right? And that seemed to set the tone for – it seemed like it transformed his teammates. The players, I don't think they had really, at that point, were really bought into Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
They bought into, that's going to last, beyond this year. I don't know. But they bought into Mason. The players looked differently. They had more energy. You didn't see that. They were, guys weren't blocking.
Yeah.
Guys on the sideline look, they were sad looking. They were angry. They were yelling at coaches on the sideline. And all of a sudden, people were running their routes crisply. The running backs are just powering through the holes.
Yeah.
It's the same players, right? Same blockers. Mm-hmm. What was the difference? I think it was this quarterback, just this unlikely guy energized them. And they got rid of the coordinator. It was like they're at the cliff, edge of the cliff, right?
Right.
It's either do something or go off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like the last option they had was to go to Mason Rudolph. We said the coordinator was at fault. Well, maybe he was, but the offense kind of looked the same, even after he left. The only difference was the quarterback, and they started to have trust in him. His ability to stay in the pocket. Versus Kenny right now, a young quarterback who just is not, when that pocket starts to collapse, he is not comfortable. Mason, he stands in there. And the other thing I've seen Mason does, he takes the little short, he'll take the little short pass. I didn't really see it that much with Kenny, but he'll just make a little, he'll look, and he'll just throw a little short pass, and the running back will do. I didn't see that much with Pickett. Just little subtle type things that Mason does that Kenny, and I hope, I know Kenny said one day he hasn't learned anything watching from the sideline, but I hope he does learn a few things. Yeah. Because you can't teach somebody to be strong in the pocket.
Yeah.
That's something that you either do or you don't. Well, will he develop that? We hope so, but Mason has it right now. He has the ability to stand in the pocket and see the pressure coming and still make the throw and also go through all his progressions, which Kenny doesn't always do.
Well, you talk about the Ruiz loyalty, which is true. And I've heard various people say, well, they'll turn back to Kenny Pickett because it's that loyalty. He's a first-round draft pick, blah, 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 and everything else. But, no, we agree with what you're saying about how the players look on the sideline and everything else. I wonder, would the Rooneys watch that? Because, to me, I think the reason why they kept Matt Canada was just blind loyalty. I mean, he was buddies with Tomlin. It was hard to get rid of him. But there came that breaking point. I mean, they lost an awful game to the Browns where the Browns.
Oh, my God, that was horrible.
Yeah. And then
that was horrible.
Yeah. You got to laugh because otherwise you just cry. It was horrible. Just the worst.
But you're a definitely educated football guy. You see it. We see it. We're not as educated as you are. Everyone sees it. What would it take for the Rooneys to say? Because in my opinion, people don't agree with this. Didn't they make that decision already? Because if they're so loyal to Kenny Pickett, they're in the playoffs. Do your loyal card. But they're saying Mason's the guy. I think they're saying it without saying it. You know what I mean? I think they've decided that, hey, if we can keep Mason Rudolph, we know we're going to have to pay him. I don't think you're going to have to pay him $30-40 million. Maybe you can pay 15, 18. You think they'll do it?
I think that I don't see time. I don't see team. I mean, Mason Rudolph's had a nice few games.
Right.
I don't see a team just lining up, giving him, $20-30 million a year. I think he would like to stay with the Steelers if he feels like he's going to be respected, and he's not going to be – because I don't think Trubisky's coming back. What do you guys think? He's gone, right? He's gone.
There's been no success that would justify paying him anywhere near what he has been making, and I don't see him coming back for less.
So he's your backup then. So then Mason becomes a backup. But hey, he takes him to the – well, we know it's not happening, but he takes him to the Super Bowl. Then he's their quarterback next year. But we know that's probably not going to happen. But
I think even if they find a way to get past Buffalo, get past the wild card,
that would be incredible. That would be incredible.
Then you legitimately have to start asking those questions about what does the future look like.
That would be incredible. I think if they did that. Yeah.
I think if he can make it past this weekend, this is a legitimate concern moving forward. The decisions have to be made.
And guess what? It's a good concern.
It's a perfect concern. It's wonderful. Would love to have problems like, which successful quarterback should we go with?
Yeah.
What do you think, Mike Tomlin? I mean, he's your head coach.
Yeah.
How much do you think he's putting into the quarterback choice? I mean, I know he kind of more specializes on defense. Some people think he's kind of de facto defense coordinator for the Steelers right now anyway. I mean, he's got to be invested because obviously, quarterback's such a big deal and you can't win without a quarterback. Do you think he's trying to figure this out? Like some people think he doesn't like Mason. I don't know if I see that. I mean, what do you think? Does he have something to say about it?
I think the organization was invested in Kenny Pickett. I mean, my first year covering the Steelers, I actually scooped the market. I predicted they were going to draft Lawrence Timmons, a linebacker.
Yeah.
And people were like, why would you draft Lawrence Timmons, a linebacker? They had a bunch of linebackers in, right? They also drafted, that was a great draft. They also drafted Lamar Woodley in the second round that year. And think about it. He was a defensive end in Michigan. And everybody thought he was too big and fat. And the Steelers turned him into a linebacker. They envisioned him as a linebacker. But I'm saying that to say that they used to draft players. They said he was the best guy on the board. That's how they drafted. Because so they would overdraft certain positions because they said, okay, this guy is the best guy. But to me, Kenny Pickett, I'm not going to say he was a reach, but they needed a quarterback, right? Ben is gone.
Yeah.
We got it. I mean, I think you could have got Kenny Pickett, beyond the first round. They thought very highly of him. More so than anybody else, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was a reach. And they don't normally, or at least in the past, they didn't reach. And I think that's, one of their problems. They've kind of changed philosophically in that way. The Steelers never reached because they always had the next person to plug in, right? But they didn't have a quarterback.
But that's the luxury of having a quality quarterback for as long as they had, is they didn't have to draft those.
Yeah. And I say this all the time. People get mad at me, but Steeler fans and the media, they're incredibly spoiled. This team has not had a losing season since 2003? That doesn't even make any sense, does it? I mean, come on. One losing season.
Yeah, and Steelers fans, we want to blame somebody.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I mean, I was at training camp one day this year. I liked Mason over Mitch. Mason looked pretty good in the preseason. Yeah. Mitch looked a mess. When you sit there and say, okay, Kane is out, who do we put in? How much of a mistake it is to pick the wrong guy? I mean, I know Mitch at the time was your second string. So they probably just said, okay, put the second string guy in, there's Mitch. But, man, everyone's thinking, man, if Mason was there, even if they would have won one of those three, losses, the Patriots, Cardinals, and Colts.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to blame people. We're angry Steelers people. Should we blame anybody for picking Mitch over Mason at that time?
I think this is the one situation where Mike Tomlin, not being a quote-unquote offensive guru type coach, may have hurt them. They went out and got Trubisky, right? Mm-hmm. He was a veteran, took the Bears to the playoffs a couple times. Every time I see Mitch Trubisky, I think about Patrick Mahomes, and I'll leave it at that. And he was a veteran, right? And at their price tag, he fit, we'll pay him a little bit of money, but we got to have a veteran, right? Mm-hmm. And I think they got caught up into that. Maybe a more offensive-minded head coach would have looked at a Mason Rudolph, who can throw the ball down the field and say, let's give this guy, let's see what he can do. Let's bring him in, we'll get Pickett, we can get him in the second round or whatever. Let's look at this Mason Rudolph guy. We've kept him around for 5 years, right? I guess they kept him around for some reason. They saw something. He had a first-round grade when he came out of the draft back from Oklahoma State. They never gave him or he didn't play well enough in certain situations. And maybe they weren't looking at close enough at just subtle things and what he could possibly bring. And he just kind of got caught, stuck back at the end of the line. And then they have nothing else. There's no other options.
Yeah.
There's nothing. You're backed into the corner, right? You have nothing else to do. And okay, let's toss him out there.
It was either Mason or was it McSorley? Another guy off the couch. Like, what are you going to do? You got to put him in and give it a shot.
And
this, people want to blame Tomlin for everything. How much blame should he take for the fact that rolled Mitch out over Mason, and also too the Matt Canada thing? I mean, there was wild speculation. Are they buddies? Are they best friends or everything?
Yeah.
It's hard, man. I mean, I know, I've worked with friends before. You sit there and you say, when do you pull the cord and everything? I mean, we like to blame. I mean, how much blame do you think Mike should take for those two moves?
I mean, he's the head coach. I mean, he's got to take responsibility for that. I don't have a problem with him and Matt Canada being best buds or what BFFs or whatever, but maybe not as him being the coordinator.
Yeah.
Maybe bring him in as a whatever, I just don't think he was the right. Sometimes you got to go out there, that everybody's saying now, you guys got to go out there and get an offensive coordinator. You got to get somebody that's going to be. I don't think the guys that are there now are the difference makers that they're using as their co-offensive coordinators. I think they got to go out. Look at the Buffaloes. They brought former Miami Dolphins Hurricanes quarterback. He's now the coordinator. They got rid of the coordinator and he changed the offense. And I think that's what they need. They need more creativity in a league. They can still be the defensive minded, but you do have to put pressure on the defense. Mm-hmm. You can't always just rely on this power running game. They want to keep doing that. And that's great, but you gotta add a little more sophistication to your offense. They've got playmakers. Pickens, come on, Pickens has got over 1,100 yards or whatever, and he only catches the ball. This guy can be a 1,800 yard receiver with the right quarterback in an offense. He's averaging almost 20 yards a catch. I think he's second in the league in yards per catch. They got a nice tight end. They've got good running backs, and Johnson's a pretty good. So they've got some weapons offensively, but you got to pick it up a little bit, guys.
Mm-hmm. Here's another thing to think about. When Matt Cannon got canned, we were always like, oh man, who's going to be the young, hot, offensive coordinator? What do you think about Eddie Faulkner? When they first brought him in, we're like, all right, this is the guy that's going to keep his ship afloat till the end of the year. But man, the more you think about it, Eddie Faulkner, I don't know if you can give him all the credit for everything that happened, but look, he's got Mason producing. Najee Harris was kind of inconsistent a little bit earlier in the year. Now Najee could be your secret to making some type of a playoff run. I'm not sure if Eddie Faulkner is your offensive coordinator, but I think you can make a pretty convincing case right now. Do you think?
Well, now this goes back to the loyalty factor.
Yeah.
And the Steelers, I think that makes your argument stronger. The Steelers are going to be, he has helped them around, and they're going to give that a lot of consideration. Do we go with that, or do we bring in this offensive guru from somewhere and turn the offense over to him? And, more than likely, they may stay in-house, probably make a lot of media and fans unhappy, but that's never really concerned the Steelers, what people think. I just think it's more, regardless of who's calling the plays, they've got to have this consistency at the quarterback position. And if it's Mason Rudolph at the end of the day, so be it. And let Kenny Pickett continue to develop. They're not getting rid of him. He's under that rookie deal, so he's going to be there. But he's going to have to step up his game. And I hope this has been the kick in the rear that he needs to understand that.
Well, I think he has happy feet. Mason had happy feet when he got concussed all those times.
Yep.
Mason learned. Hopefully Kenny can learn the same lesson. I think it's almost as simple as that. I don't think Kenny's a bad quarterback. The happy feet's killing him this year.
Yeah.
And if he can get over that, I think it'll be good.
Perhaps he needs to get knocked in the head with his own helmet.
Yeah.
That seems to have knocked something into place for Mason.
Yeah, it's certainly
got to let it heal up for a little while, but absolutely.
Cleared the cobwebs out, right?
That's right. I have a question for you. Some of what we're talking about in circles a lot about the loyalty and the way that the Steelers do make choices and stick with people for what other people would consider to be longer than necessary, and that they select people out of nowhere. They're not making the hot, young star person. That's not the quality they're looking for. What, in your opinion, based off of the conversations that you've had with people and seeing the progression of Tomlin's career, what do you think might be a quality that Steelers ownership saw in Tomlin that made them know that this was somebody that they could commit to long term? Is there something about him? Really, even back then, but it would probably still be something that was true about him, I would imagine.
Yeah. There's a couple chapters in my book where it wasn't all peaches and cream. They had back-to-back 8-8 seasons. Yeah. And one of the things I tried to do in those chapters, I would always, because Art really would only talk. He only talks at the end of the year. Yeah. So I really paid attention. So some people, I look at those things as like throwaway quotes, but I studied those quotes, and you can take a lot out of them. The way he would break the season down. Mm-hmm. Well, one year, we had injuries to quarterbacks. Then they asked, did you lose the team when they had the issues with Antonio Brown and Ben? He said, well, we were 13-3 or whatever. So they look at it just differently than the way we look at it in a sense. They, did he lose the team? Well, how did he lose the team? We were 13-3. Now, we might say, yeah, he lost the team. But the way he's looking at it is that you don't lose the team and go 13-3. Now, you could look at some teams this year who were in similar situations to the Steelers when they were 7-7, right? I mean, they're losing to Arizona. And I watched that New England game on TV. I couldn't. That was one of the worst.
Sickening.
That 38, who now all of a sudden seems fast, because I remember he had an interception in that game. And I was like, you got to score, dude, because I know they're not going to score a touchdown. And he got caught. It was like the slowest run I'd ever seen in my life. Even he now looks like he's sprinting around the field. So I don't know what's gotten into these guys. But so what happened? What did he do to them? Why didn't they just, Pickens not blocking, 18's pouting? Why didn't they just pack it in? Well, that's and I think that's what ownership's looking at. To try to answer your question. Yeah. That's what did you lose the locker room? Yeah, you lost it. You lost at home to Arizona and New England, and you lost 2 more games, and you end up the season at not, at 8-9 or 7 or you don't win another game, and you end up at 7-10, and you get fired. Like, who was 7-10 and got fired this year? He just got fired, and he was 7-10.
The Falcons game.
Yeah, he was 7-10. He was 7-10 3 straight years, and he lost. He didn't lose the team, but he lost games. So I guess they're looking at it like, okay, we're 10-7, and we had all kind of quarterback issues. We had all kind of injury issues. If we just had a healthy T.J. Watt and healthy Micah Fitzpatrick, and we didn't have the problems with the inside linebackers, hey, we would have been okay. Maybe we would have won 11 games. We won 10. Yeah. Maybe we would have won 12. And the best team in the league only won 13 games, right?
Right.
So it's not like it was like a 15-2 team. So it really isn't that big of a gap the way the Rooney looks at it. Not the way I look at it or the media, but the way they look at it. Right. We're not that far away. When fans want to change, media wants to change, but the Steelers are like, okay, we bring somebody else in. He's going to
turn over everything.
We have to win the locker room over. We played good at the end, so are we better off getting rid of him and bringing somebody else in, or are we better off getting the quarterback play? Mike, you got to get the quarterback situation right. You got to get that right. We can't go through another year of this, Mike. So you got to get this quarterback thing right. If it means getting another coordinator, whatever, you got to get the quarterback right.
But thinking about how the Roonies think, they're 7-7, like, as we said, they lost 3 awful games. What if they just tank the rest of the year? Like, you had 3 more games, you end up 7-10. You think there's a chance Tom would have been gone if that happened?
They could have happened. I mean, it was bad, guys. It was It was bad. I mean, and they were showing shots of him on the sideline. It was like he was looking dazed. I mean, it was like everything was. It was like what are they doing? It was just like he couldn't do anything. But the thing about him that interests me, I mean, when they got drilled by Houston, and everybody was waiting to hear, okay, what's he going to say at the press conference? And he didn't say anything that people wanted to hear. He said, we're gonna put our helmets on this week because I didn't see physicality there. And everybody said, oh, everybody laughed. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Then they went on a mini winning streak, and they ended up 7-4. And now they come to 7-7, and he just kind of says, we're going back into the lab, and we're going to fix some things. We're going to deal with our lack of depth on defense because we're getting killed. Opposing tight ends are just killing us. Remember, there was like 2 or 3 games where the Cardinals tight end and the New England tight end, they were just crushing the Steelers. And all of a sudden, you didn't see it as much anymore. So I think what he does is he addresses certain elements. It's like a puzzle. We can't fix the whole puzzle. We don't have the pieces for everything, but we can fix this. We can fix this piece of the puzzle over here. We can fix this piece of the puzzle over here. And I think that's something that the Rooneys just like, or Art Rooney likes. It's just this ability to adapt, adjust, and no, he hasn't lost the locker room yet. Because if he did, they wouldn't be in the playoffs, and we'd probably be talking right now about who's the next Steelers coach going to be.
And with them 10-7, I mean, it's probably unthinkable to think they would fire Tomlin. But the rumor out this week was saying, hey, and it was reported by a couple different of these analysts that, hey, Tomlin could take a year off. You know, I mean, he may just take a step back. Enough against the Steelers. He just needs a break. From your book, where you talked to a lot of people that knew him, and, you know, obviously you're still plugged into the NFL right now. Do you see that happening? I mean, we wouldn't have thought about the past, but you think Tomlin might want a break? I mean, just to do something else?
I took a lot from his brother Ed, who actually I have an event Thursday next week at Point Park University in Pittsburgh. He's going to be on the panel actually. And I asked him one time because I said, "Hey, let's talk." You know, people say, "Oh, Mike will be a great TV announcer one day." You know, he'd be a natural. He just started laughing. He said, "Dude," he said, "my brother is he's a gym teacher. He's a coach. He loves football. He would probably go crazy. That's who he is. He's a football coach. That's what he does."
For so many of these guys, they don't know how to live life without that. No. That's what they've been doing for so long. Yeah. What do you do?
I don't know. I couldn't see him taking a year off.
I think he's a fascinating speaker when he gets up and does press conferences, and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. The Tomlinisms, those are all really entertaining for those of us who are fans, but they are also kind of like really confusing to people who don't understand where he's coming from. And so I hear all these people like Chris is talking about him going and being an analyst or something. It's like, well, I see him being entertaining, but he just says these phrases that he will repeat because like a teacher, my day job is as a teacher. You come up with these phrases so that you can say them over and over and over again, and then your team doesn't misunderstand what you want.
You're exactly
right.
You
have the phrase. You have the standard is the standard. You have all of these phrases that he says all the time. We're going to put our helmets on. We're going to tear our eyelids off. Like, you know what that means, so that when you are in the heat of battle, it comes to your head as quick as anything.
Yeah, Blaine Stewart.
I just don't see how that translates to being an analyst in the way that a lot of successful analysts do it.
No, he's good. I mean, he can speak, but it's a different type of conversationalist. He's not like a conversationalist like some of the really good announcers. He's gonna talk to you like a coach. Blaine Stewart, who was on the Steelers staff for a while, who was the late Bill Stewart's son.
Okay.
And who gave and Bill Stewart gave Tomlin his first job at VMI. He said that Tomlin tells his coaches he wants them to coach like teachers. He actually wants them to teach, which kind of goes to your point.
Mm-hmm.
You're teaching. It's almost like a classroom setting. Like you say, you deliver the message. The message has to be delivered, a certain way. So he likes coaches that he feels like can do that, that can deliver the messages to the players. And I would say that, the message got through, but I think the message has always gotten through, but I think these players are human, and I think they needed that kick. They needed Mason Rudolph. They needed something positive, to see something positive. Because, I was just watching those offenses. It was like everybody knew they weren't going to move the ball.
Right.
Everybody knew it. Tomlin knew it. They weren't going to score. They're not going to move the ball. You just knew it. Trubisky, I don't know what happened to him, but he's lost. No confidence. No confidence. Just, and the players, after a while, I say, dude, you got to do something, coach. Now, if he had kept playing him, maybe he would have lost the team.
Right.
Because they would have kept losing games, and the players started looking at Tomlin like, what are you doing?
Are you not seeing this?
So I think he probably felt that too, in making this decision.
Yeah.
Do you think, John, like, I always hear everyone has a price. Like, you would think of a guy like TJ Watson, touchable. When somebody gives you 15 first-round draft picks, maybe you have to take the deal. It doesn't sound like you're anticipating the Steelers are going to have a new coach next year. But, you hear about some of these teams, like there's a bunch of openings this year.
Yeah.
Do you think some team could knock the Steelers' socks off where they sit there and say, yeah, we're loyal, we like Tomlin, we don't necessarily want to place coaches, but dang, this team gave us 3 or 4 first-round draft picks. Do you think there's any way something like that could possibly happen?
Well, I'd have to look at the teams that we were looking
Yeah.
at because they're all NFL teams, but they're all run differently. And he goes to Washington, or you're talking about a totally different organization. Players who have a totally different mindset. With LA, I mean not LA, Vegas.
Yeah.
I would look at the jobs. Maybe there's a job that you could say, you know what, this could be the job that he might go to because like from a control standpoint, from an ownership standpoint, from draft picks and money, that might appeal to him. But he's, I've got this situation here pretty much the way I want it. I don't know what I'm going to be getting going somewhere else to another team, to another organization. I think if there's a match out there, I would say, yeah, maybe that's something that he would be open to, where I can go over here to this organization that kind of has some of the same values that remember, he's been just played 17 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an incredibly long time to be with one team. So you're used to things being done a certain way. Now you go to another franchise and it's just totally different. And he's got to adjust. The organization's got to adjust to him, the players, everything, just totally different.
Well, one final thing, because you've been so kind with your time. What's your pick for the game? I mean, I know there's a lot we don't know, but if you had to put on your betting hat or whatever, like, give us a score for the Buffalo-Pittsburgh game.
I don't know. Why not be? I'm going to be a Steelers homer here. I don't know. I think they've come a long way. I think all the key comes down to can they run the ball? Can they control the clock? Can they keep Josh Allen off the field? I can see like a 20-17 possibly Steelers. I mean, I think the defense is playing good, solid. I mean, but TJ Watt, not having him, that's huge. But I don't know. They've surprised me to this point. Granted, Baltimore, a lot of starters weren't playing. The Seattle game was the one that surprised me. I didn't think they were going to win in Seattle. I really didn't.
They've never been burned really bad by Lamar Jackson. I mean,
no,
they always seem to play Baltimore pretty well. I'll tell you. I mean, I think back to, wasn't like 2005 the year Ben won the first Super Bowl?
Yeah,
they went to the playoffs, and when they got to like Denver, you're like, man, they're better than Denver. And
well, they had to win everything to get in. They had to win like their last 3-4 games, right, to even make the playoffs.
Right.
Well, and I mean, I'm looking at this. I know Buffalo has a better record. I know why they're the number 2 seed, but I don't look as Buffalo is invincible. I don't look as Baltimore is invincible.
No.
I mean, I think Miami can say, yeah, I mean, when they play well, they could throw 50 on you, but they're not what they used to be. And Miami can't be a winning team. I mean, I think it's silly to sit there and think the Steelers are a Super Bowl team, but they could make a run. I mean, I think there's going to be a sleeper coming out of AFC. It might be Houston or Cleveland. I'm just not into the top seeds this year.
No, I think that you can't overlook the fact that they're playing really good football right now.
Yeah.
They're playing their best football. Buffalo has been on a roll too, but the other thing about pro football is so hard to tell. Will they play at the same level that they played last week against Miami? Buffalo. They're such a hard team to, get a feel for. Playing the Steelers is not the same as playing Miami or playing New England for them. So maybe they don't have the exact same approach. I don't know. I'm not going to say overconfidence, but we're at home. Those guys kind of suck over there, the Steelers. We got Josh. Something happens early, a turnover, or, the Steelers get an early score. The Steelers have nothing to lose, right? Nobody's picking them to win. Nobody thinks they're going to win. So they shouldn't go out there tight. I could see them trying Mason Rudolph with a bomb on the second play of the game. I could see something like that.
Oh, yeah. And they should.
Yeah,
like
I
that.
can see that. Yeah. I can see that.
Rolling up and smacking them in the mouth, like that's going to be a winning methodology for the Steelers at this point.
Yeah.
So they play their best ball.
I'm picking the Steelers.
Yeah, they play their best ball when they're being overlooked, when everybody's saying there's no way that the Steelers come through this, everybody said they were going to go down to the Ravens. All the pregame picks were Ravens, except for RC, which good for him. Good for him for saying there was a chance.
He's trying to control himself on the air. He's really trying hard to control himself.
Yeah,
I like his commentary a lot. He's good.
Yeah. He got mad at me once because before the draft, I tried to compare Kyle Hamilton to, the great Ravens young safety, the Troy, and he didn't like that comparison. Yeah, Archie got mad at me, but
they get too personal. They get too personal.
John, you've been so kind of your time, but maybe could you give us before you go, a real quick, fun Steelers story? I mean, don't embarrass anybody or get yourself in trouble, but is there, we just love hearing fun stuff about old Steelers. Is there any good stories you could share?
Those teams back then were just so interesting. I'm trying to think of some of those locker room exchanges with those guys. I mean, you had a James Harrison in there, you had Joey Porter for a year. Hines Ward, who was a great interview guy. I just think they're, as far as picking a story out, they were just they're different. Those teams were different. What stands out to me, those teams basically coached themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They were Tomlin, brought a little bit of different, a different voice than Bill Cowher, but those guys were veterans. They had won a Super Bowl. They were confident. They were cocky. You don't have those type of players. And I think maybe that's what Ben was alluding to when he talked about, the young players not seeing it. And those guys, they didn't put up, George Pickens would have gotten beat down in the locker room back then. That wouldn't have happened. And I think and to me, so that's the amazing thing about looking at Tomlin now and then. Totally different type of team.
Right.
And he's figuring out, you could trust those teams, right? You could trust those players and that they were going, you can't trust this team that way. You can coach to them and you can teach them, but, you also got to put a foot on there, what. And I think that's been one of his big adjustments. But for me, just maybe not a funny story, but just the difference in the type of team that he's coaching now, totally different. And the fact that he's able to adjust, Belichick's having difficulty adjusting to a newer NFL now. He's going to have to lighten up a little bit and do things. Maybe you can't just do things the way you've done them forever. First of all, you don't have Tom Brady anymore, but it's a different. I don't
know if he can lighten up.
Yeah, you're dealing with different players. It's a different league, and I think that's how Thomas Bill survived. And I think he learned. I think this was a learning year for him.
Yeah,
I think he went into it one way, and I think he was forced to change in midstream, or they wouldn't have made it.
Well, you speak of Pickens. If you write part 2 of your book, I mean, I've heard that he really helped sit Pickens down, but halfway through the year, Pickens was almost out of control. When he failed to block and everything for that guy, for Warren. And, you look at him at Balmer, he didn't have the target, but he was still blocking hard. He wasn't pouting. I think it was a good thing from Mike Tomlin. So, John, this has been great. And hopefully we can have you back next time the Steelers make a big move. Hopefully they don't switch their coaches or make any awful trades or anything. But, I'd love to bring it back and commiserate with us when it happens. Or we could celebrate the Super Bowl.
That would be unbelievable, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you pick the Bills. So if we hold your feet to the fire and say, hey, pick next 3 games.
I'm for selfish reasons, man. I want them to keep winning. I mean, I can hopefully sell a few more books this way, right?
Hey, there you go. There you go.
Well, and before you go, let's definitely mention the book.
Oh, yeah. Here's a picture of it. Tomlin,
Yep.
the soul of the football coach, John Harris, and Tony Dungy, the great Tony Dungy, writes the foreword. He gave Mike Tomlin his first NFL job. So good man, and interesting story there. They actually were going to, when Tony Dungy got fired by Tampa Bay, he wanted to hire Mike Tomlin as his defensive coordinator in Indy, and Tampa Bay wouldn't let him out of the contract. And that was just his second year after his first year as an assistant in Tampa Bay. So
fantastic. Yeah. And again, we have listeners from different areas. I know we're sharing this on Mahoning Matters, but if you're listeners from Mahoning Matters or you're in the Youngstown area, remember, you said January 17th, right? At 2 p.m.
January 17th, 2 p.m. Right. at YSU at Stambaugh Stadium. If you get, I can't remember. Oh, there we go. We're at the Baco Family Leadership Development Center in the stadium. 2:00.
Well, and you're not far away from Pittsburgh, so you never know. Yeah, maybe Mike will come by. Hey. Why? Oh, I forgot to ask you about that. Why didn't you talk in the book? You said you were
Tomlin?
Yeah.
No, it's an unauthorized biography. It didn't shock me. Okay. I just think he's a guy that wants to have. I don't think he felt like, okay, I'm not controlling this 100%. I don't know exactly what. And I mean, because I think it's a very fair, positive portrayal of him. I mean, I think it puts the Steelers in a tremendous light. But I in some ways, I understand maybe why he didn't want to be involved with it there. I'm very thankful to his brother, Ed.
Yeah.
It was extremely helpful. And the way I look at it like this, if he didn't want people involved, he certainly wouldn't want his brother to talk to me, who they're very close. And he wouldn't have done it. I mean, it's just, and he's been very helpful, his brother. And like I said, he's going to even participate in an event next week. So
that's great.
I sent him a copy. He hasn't responded. I don't think he will, but but I think he'll like it. Some people have asked me. I think he'll like it. It's a positive portrayal of him. It's his first book in that way. He's never had a book written about him as a football coach, so I think he'll enjoy some of it. Yeah,
there's got to be a weird feeling to be reading the book about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And put this way, for Steelers fans out there, I mean, I know Tom's a controversial figure. I mean, you either love him or you hate him. But I could say if you love the guy or hate the guy, read the book. I mean, there's a lot of, as you said, you talked to a lot of his former players, with Buccaneers and Vikings, some coaches. So you kind of help shape what made the guy. So, yeah, pick it up if you're a fan or a hater of Tom.
I love it. I love it.
I help you some more books. Yeah, I mean,
haters, please.
Haters.
Come on.
Oh, the juicy stories are in there. You got to get this book.
Haters have money too, right?
I don't know. I'm just guessing. Well, John, hang out for a second afterwards. Thank you for your time. Like I said, let's be in touch. We'll celebrate the Super Bowl, or maybe if they fire Tomlin for some crazy reason, we'll get to that together too. All right. Thanks for John, and for Joe and me. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. See ya.